back some more reviews, and before I get the review started, I wanted to apologize for not making any videos for a few days. It was because for the past few days I've been a little bit sick, and I really, wasn't. I was so sick that if I was going to do the review, I'd be coughing all over the place, and yeah, I was pretty sick. So I waited a few days until the sickness went away, and eventually it did. And also I was kind of busy over the past few days, so I wasn't able to upload any videos. But today I'm talking about Freddy's Dead, The Final Nightmare. Now, I have this 4-pack right here, which I have I have these two movies, 5 and New Nightmare on DVD, but these are the only ones I'm kind of missing right now. So this is sort of a backup version of Freddy vs. Jason. The other DVD that I had, I lost it. And then Freddy's Dead, I had the VHS over there in a big pile of VHS tapes, and I really didn't feel like digging in a big pile of VHS tapes. So figure I just use this 4-pack to show that this is pretty much the only DVD version that I have of Freddy's Dead. I will pick it up on individual DVDs like the other movies as well. One day when I find it, I'll pick it up on separate DVD. But yeah, using this 4-pack, which is really cracked up. I mean, this one not as much as the first pack. I mean, it is. You guys really can't tell, but there's scratches on it and stuff like that. Not really any design to it. Double-sided disc, but they're pretty scratched up, and yeah, I've had them for a while, so they're kind of old. That's why they're all scratched up and stuff like that. But I have to re-buy them all separately. I know it's like, why don't you buy a different DVD pack? Well, I want to buy them all separate DVD, mainly because to have them on separate DVD, it's like less of a chance of, because I hate double-sided discs. Because you gotta take it out, and you gotta flip the disc over, and I don't understand why you can't just have just separate DVDs. And and it's also, they're very easy to scratch. Double-sided discs, because both sides of the disc are movies, so it's very hard to keep the disc clean, and it's very hard to keep it not scratched. So yeah, I'm not really the biggest fan of double-sided discs because they get scratched easily. So if I can just buy them on separate DVDs, give them in better condition, and yeah, so that's why I'm not rebuying a 4-pack, because I hate double-sided discs. There are a few movies that I do own that are double-sided discs, but and it's just this 4-pack, man. It came with double-sided discs. I don't like double-sided discs, because they get fingerprints on them easily, they get scratched easily, and yeah. So if I can just buy regular versions of them with the regular DVDs, then that's cool. But talk about Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. Came out in 1991. Gets a 4.9 on IMDb. This is pretty much one of the most hated ones in the series. The big, complaint with this movie is the fact that there is a lot of goofy humor. Like, it gets to the point where it can go over the top. I can agree with that. There is some moments in the movie that the humor kind of got a little too far. It just went over the top of the humor sometimes. But I gotta say, this is probably one of my favorite ones in the series. Freddy's Dead: The Final Nightmare. This is probably one of my favorite ones. And people are probably shocked, like, what? This is one of your favorite ones in the series? No, yes, it isn't scary to watch this movie. It's not scary at all. But it's one heck of a fun movie to watch. And I really enjoyed the dream sequences. It has likable characters, decent acting, and practical effects, and some of the humor was over the top, but some of it was also very funny, and it was just a very fun movie to watch, in my opinion. I was watching this movie and I was having a fun time with it. In my opinion, it has some of the best dream sequences, and some ideas I really didn't care for. I didn't care for the whole idea of Freddy Krueger out of nowhere having a kid. Just felt like it was a very out of nowhere, out of the blue sort of thing. Like, oh, he has a kid. Like, oh, that's out of nowhere. Didn't like that idea. But I would say it's a decent idea about Freddy Krueger, wiping out all the kids in Elm Street. or in Springfield, and he's killed basically all the kids there. And there's only one kid left, and that's the basically the John Doe character played by Sean Greenblatt. And there's also before I continue with the little bit of the plot, basically the good thing I was getting to about the plot is that I like the idea that it's sort of one character have to go out into the world and bring back more kids to Elm Street, so that Freddy Krueger can get stronger and just break out of Elm Street. So because basically Freddy Krueger trying to expand past Elm Street, he's trying to get past Springfield. He's trying to basically go over the world, and he sends the John Doe character out to get more victims and bring them back to Elm Street. And I didn't mind that idea, sort of a decent idea. But the idea of Freddy Krueger having this kid, I didn't really care for. The humor was very entertaining, but sometimes, and I'm saying sometimes, it got over the top. Like the freaking scene at the beginning of the movie with Freddy Krueger on is a freaking witch. I swear Freddy Krueger's a freaking witch, and he's riding on a freaking broom. I'll get you, my little pretty, and your little soul too. Ha! I'm like, what the freak was that all about? Why did you have to go the Wizard of Oz route? Like, it just was not funny. And then you got him pushing spikes, a bed of spikes over in front of, the John Doe character when he's falling to the sky. And he does it in a Looney Tunes sort of style where he pushes it over, and it just reminded me of a cartoon. And, just some ideas were just really cartoony. But some I had a lot of fun with. I had a lot of fun with the idea of sort of Spencer being in this game world, and in real life he's being controlled. Yeah, some of the sound effects are kind of goofy, but it was funny seeing like punch through walls, and of course the whole bouncing like this I didn't really care for. It was like, what the freak? But that scene was pretty decent, pretty funny. And I like the scene where he's like, because they kick the controller out of his hand, and he goes, "You've got the power glove." Pretty funny scene. Robert Englund has a lot of fun in this movie. He is having a blast in this movie. You can tell, coming up with so many memorable scenes. Of course, you got a great cast. Great cast of characters. You got Lisa Zane playing Maggie. She did a pretty decent job. Of course, you got the John Doe character. You got Tracy played by Leslie Dean, or I think that's Leslie Dean. I think. Kind of an edgy girl. Girl you don't want to mess with. Carlos by Ricky Dean Logan, fun character. You got basically the stoner Spencer played by Brecklin Meyer. But you have a decent cast of characters. And the movie, it has a lot more good things than bad things. I mean, it has, in my opinion, some very well done effects. Granted, the makeup on Freddy Krueger in this movie is not the strongest. This is probably the weakest makeup of them all. Actually, I won't even say that. This isn't as bad as 5. Like, in my opinion, 5, it was worse than this. But this is probably above 5 a little bit. So, yeah, not much better. It's still some very bad makeup on Freddy Krueger. But as far as practical effects goes, it has some very well done effects. And in my opinion, it was directed very well. It has a good look to it. And it has a lot of fun moments to it. Yes, sometimes it got over the top, but most of the time it kept it in a decent level, at least in my opinion. So it didn't get over the top a lot. It was just sometimes it would get really over the top with the humor. And Robert Englund and the rest of the cast did a good job. Likeable characters, some decent ideas, some I don't like, some I do like. But overall, those are pretty fun sequel. I can actually say this is a fun movie, definitely underrated movie. It gets a lot of freaking flack, and it gets a lot of hate. Which it's cool if you don't like the movie, that's fine. I'm just saying I had a lot of fun with the movie. I thought it was a very fun sequel. And the story is pretty basic. I mean, you got, like I said, John Doe character being the last kid left in Elm Street. And basically he's having this nightmare at the beginning of the movie where he's in an airplane and the girl's like, looking over at me. He's like, I'm afraid of heights. And she goes, don't be a wussy. And then like she flies with the airplane, and he drops out of the airplane, and he wakes up in this house, and then he falls out this window, rolls on this endless hill, and then walks to a ticket booth, and there's Robert Shea in there, and one ticket. Don't want to miss the bus, do you? Pretty memorable line. And then of course you got that hilarious scene. Hilarious. I was cracking up during that scene. And then of course he stops the bus, and the John Doe character flies out of Elm Street, and he goes, "Now be a good little doggy and go fetch." Definitely some memorable lines of dialogue. More memorable lines in Part 5. I hated Part 5's dialogue. I can't even really remember any lines of dialogue from Part 5 right at this moment. I might remember them, a little bit more as I keep thinking about it, but there really wasn't that many memorable lines in Part 5. Other than "It's a boy." But besides that, this has definitely a lot more better dialogue than Part 5, in my opinion. And basically, John Doe goes to this because he's pretty much homeless, and he goes to this, shelter where there's other teens in there like Carlos and Spencer, and Tracy, and they're pretty much just three people trying to get out of there. So they overhear about Maggie, this person who works there. She's gonna try and help John Doe remember his name, remember who he is, and she's gonna take him back to Elm Street. And Carlos, Tracy, and Spencer end up getting in the back of the van and sneaking with them to Elm Street. And when they get there, of course, Maggie finds them that they're in the van, tells them to go back to the shelter. But of course, they get stuck in this like loop, and they can't leave. And there's even this one funny scene where Carlos falls asleep, and then Tracy's like, "Hey, Carlos, can check like where are we at on the map? Here, check the map, Carlos." And then he opens it up, and the freaking car fills with the freaking map, and the freaking map is like is an endless map. And then he opens up, it says you're screwed. And then the girl's like, "Carlos, what's the map say?" And he's like, "The map says." You guys know what the lines say, but I'm gonna try and keep it PG-13. But it's just a fun line. The map says we're screwed. And then of course they get to the house where Nancy stayed at, Nancy's house from the first movie, and they fall asleep, and Carlos and Spencer have nightmares. I don't think Tracy falls asleep. Um, Carlos falls asleep, and he has this freaking hilarious nightmare where he walks in this apartment complex, and his mom's behind him, and she's like, "I clean out your ear." And she has a freaking huge Q-tip, or like a Q-tip like that big, and she sticks it in his ear. Kind of a painful, scene where it goes in one ear and goes right out the other ear, and there's like ear wax all over it when he pulls it out, and you realize it's Freddy Krueger. And he goes, "Carlos, lend me your ear." And then of course Carlos is deaf; he can't hear. And while he's walking around this boiler room, Freddy's behind him like dancing and hey, or he's like dancing and stuff like that. It's hilarious. And Freddy Krueger, he's like, "Give me my hearing back." And then Freddy pretty much drops this hearing aid, but it's kind of a messed up hearing aid. When he puts it in, it kind of like, these tentacles come out and like stick to his head. And it's very painful effect. It's practical. Out his finger, drops it, and it hurts his ear. And then of course he drops like a freaking handful of needles. And then you had the hilarious scene where Freddy Krueger goes down to the where Carlos is, and he's like, shh, like a black chalkboard, like shh. the sensitive hearing makes Carlos bleed out of the nose and the ears, and then his freaking head explodes. And um, I forgot that line of dialogue Freddy Krueger says. Nice hearing from you, Carlos. Um, and then you got basically watching some sort of zombie movie, and freaking Carlos coming out of nowhere. Spencer, wake up, man, you stupid stoner. And then of course Spencer falls asleep, and then like that song, In a Garden of Evil, baby, don't you know I love you? Get that song playing, and then he pretty much gets sucked inside the TV. And then I think Tracy goes to find Maggie and the John Doe character. And they find out that, John Doe and Maggie, they're sort of trying to figure out, where all the kids went, to find out that Freddy Krueger killed. Well, actually, they're trying to figure out, that Freddy Krueger has a kid. They're trying to figure out who the kid is, and the John Doe character thinks it's him. And pretty much Tracy goes look for them, and Spencer is stuck inside the TV. He's actually in a video game he's running, and his dad's are like, "Be like me, be like me," and it was just funny, man. I know I'm like sort of just mumbling on about the nightmare and stuff like that, but it was kind of a funny scene where he's a video game and he's bouncing everywhere and punching walls and stuff. And then of course he falls in this freaking hole and then dies. And then, you got Tracy, Maggie, and John Doe. And John Doe's like, I need you to lay me out. And she's like, I can't. She's like, I know another way. He's like, lay me out. She hits him with a freaking piece of wood. And of course, when he falls asleep, he wakes up in that house. And then it goes like way up in outer space. And then he's like, I will not leave this bedroom. And then the freaking, bed catches on fire and the house catches on fire. It's like, I hate this house. And then he jumps out the freaking window, and he basically lands on a bed of spikes because Freddy Krueger's like, he basically has a parachute. Freddy Krueger's like, oh, you think I'm your? It's like, oh, you think you're my child? No, I have a daughter. You find out that Maggie's his daughter, Freddy Krueger's daughter, and basically kill the John Doe character because he falls down on a bed of spikes and gets impaled by spikes. And then pretty much Freddy Krueger sort of expands past Elm Street, and he goes to the shelter, starts having nightmares. Everybody there starts having nightmares, including Tracy and stuff like that. And pretty much they have to figure out how to kill Freddy Krueger. So Maggie goes into her dream. Granted, another big problem with this movie is the terrible 3D, the terrible scene where it's like a whole sequence done in 3D, but when it's seen in 2D, it looks crappy. You got these CGI worm things flying everywhere. Looks like crap. CGI, and you got these freaking crappy effects. And of course, Maggie goes inside of Freddy Krueger's mind and his brain and stuff like that. And basically pulls Freddy Krueger out of the nightmare. And, they get like a spiked baseball bat and knives and pipe bombs and stuff. And Maggie gets like the knives and throws them at Freddy Krueger's hand, and it gets all stuck on a wall, and then like she knocks him down on the ground, breaks his freaking fingers, and then pretty much goes like Happy Father's Day, and then pretty much takes like a pipe bomb in his chest and explodes Freddy Krueger. Kind of a stupid effect where like there's a head that comes out like a CGI head and that sort of like inflates. Well, it's like a CGI head comes towards the camera, looks kind of fake. And pretty much the movie ends with why was I born? Why was I born? Great song, very very well choice of song. I mean, it was definitely a very very catchy song by I believe Iggy Pop, and the movie has a great soundtrack. Yeah, performed by Iggy Pop, and it's like why was I born? And then, of course, it has a montage of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies before this. And this being the final Nightmare, I guess you could say it's the final Nightmare because, I mean, really enough, the Freddy that we know in this movie doesn't come back until Freddy vs. Jason. But those of you that don't know, I won't be reviewing Freddy vs. Jason during this series of reviews. I'm gonna wait till I get to the Friday the 13th marathon to do the review for Freddy vs. Jason. To sort of keep it equal. But yeah, I'll review Freddy vs. Jason when I get to the Jason, well, to the Friday the 13th movies. But yeah, we'll not be reviewing Freddy vs. Jason this series of reviews. I'll be willing to review that in the next franchise that I review. Well, I don't know if it's gonna be the next one. Whenever I do my reviews for the Friday the 13th movies, and I'll include Freddy vs. Jason on that. But yeah, this is in a way the last Nightmare on Elm Street movie with the Freddy Krueger that we know, because this movie was more of sort of the real world and the real. If Freddy Krueger was like a darker character and a real character, and it's more based on real, as if it was real. New Nightmare. Of course, it was based off of like it basically it goes out of the movies and stuff like that, which is a pretty creative idea, pretty well done idea by Wes Craven to do that. It's definitely an interesting idea, and I'll be reviewing this movie if not today, tomorrow. So yeah, Wes Craven's New Nightmare. That's I don't know if it's considered to be a sequel though, because it's the seventh movie in the series, but it's not really a sequel. It's more of a standalone sort of movie, because it takes place like I said, in the real world. But yeah, I'll review that movie tomorrow, which I've had mixed. Well, in the past, I did not like that movie. I despised Wes Craven's New Nightmare in the past. But I've watched it a few times, and now I think it's pretty good. And yeah, I'll be reviewing that movie tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, you got also one thing I forgot to mention about the good thing about this movie is it has a great soundtrack. I mean, you got "Why Was I Born" by Iggy Pop. You got "I'm Awake Now." You can't stop me. I won't dream no more. I'm awake now. By Goo Goo Dolls, and then you got a few other songs like like I said, Iron Butterflies and Agata La Vida. 99 Bottles of Beer, which is uncredited, but it's sung by the John Doe character. But um, basically, it has a great soundtrack to it. Some great songs. Yeah, Iggy Pop and their Goo Goo Dolls in there. And yeah, altogether, it's a pretty fun sequel. Actually, definitely one of my favorite ones in the series. I know I'm gonna get a lot of hate for saying that, but it's just I had a lot of fun with the movie. It was a very fun sequel in my opinion. And yeah, so thanks for watching my review for Freddy Said the Final Nightmare. I'll see you guys on the next review. Bye, guys.